Hey, I'm Jeremy. Welcome back to Rugby Informer. That game between England and the Boks proved to be an absolute cracker, and they put on a huge spectacle for the Twickenham crowd. Both teams playing some really exciting rugby. Overall thoughts, the game was very strictly reffed. Andrew Brace, as referee, was not playing any games. He was quite keen to hand out cards and give penalizations wherever any infringements were given. Had really no leeway for either team. And to be fair, I thought he was fair to both sides. So as long as that was consistent, I didn't see any problem with it. He was talking to Sia Khaleesi as well as Jamie George really well. He was calling both captains aside and constantly updating them to the constant infringements that were happening. So I thought he did a pretty good job. And thankfully, there was no real contentious calls that changed the outcome of the game. But again, we don't want to go on about the refs. I thought the game itself was really exciting. First and foremost, to give some credit to England, I thought they came out of the blocks firing. They had a really interesting strategy to try and catch the Boks off guard. And Marcus Smith was at the heart of that, along with Jack van Poortvliet. We're against the All Blacks and Wallabies in recent weeks, where England was trying their best to bash them up the middle and outrun them. They really switched up their game plan to more of a kicking strategy. You saw Marcus Smith going for those cross-field bombs, quite reminiscent of what the Boks were doing in the Rugby World Cup last year. Smith putting through a lot of these not direct cross-field kicks in order for a winger to latch onto, but just to kind of break up that very stern, aggressive Bok defense. Putting that ball in the air is quite a smart tactic by England, where the back line and all the ball carriers were being faced with a very aggressive defensive wall. The problem that a lot of teams are having is trying to get around this rush defense, this blitz defense that the Springboks are so good at. You know, they get their timing right, they're aggressive, they make their tackles, and there's a few ways to get around it. You're either playing a lot deeper, running some more complex backline moves, looking for short chip kicks, or looking for some bridge passes over the top. But another way of doing it is to go for these crossfield bomb kicks. Like, yes, it's high risk, and yes, you have a 50% chance of getting the ball back, but I think that's exactly the case England were thinking. We have a 50-50 of getting this ball back. So by Smith banging those kicks deep into the London skyline across the field, especially with the jumpers they have like Tommy Freeman and Freddie Stewart. You know, you've got these very tall, lanky wingers. Freeman's a very big guy. He doesn't really look it on camera, but he's quite a substantially taller winger than some of the other England wingers floating around. And Freddie Stewart, I think everyone knows how competent and good he is in the air. And their thinking is likely that we're either going to win this ball back, South Africa's going to knock it on. A worst case scenario, one of the South African wingers takes a cleanie and they get absolutely smashed. And it was working really well. They were retaining a few of those balls, or they were just forcing South African errors. And I think the real goal of it was to just break apart that South African defense that's so solid in the middle. So I think the real strategy of that, while there's an opportunity to regain the ball, I think the point of it is to kind of break up that really solid, really well-structured defense of the Springboks, especially in the middle. You know, once they put that big kick up in the air, and whatever happens, whether there's a knock-on or Springboks retain it or England gets the ball back, the whole defensive line is to kind of trot across, and suddenly they're out of position, suddenly they're out of shape, and suddenly they're kind of disjointed and leaving gaps where there's some slower players making their way across the field. And to be fair, it really did disrupt the Boks and kind of caught them off guard a few times. Probably the best effort I've seen in recent matches between the Springboks and other international sides to disrupt their very solid defense. The other example is Argentina, the way they played with having a really deep, multiple attacking line and using very wide, very quick, intricate passing to beat the rush defenders and get on the outside of them. It's just a smart way for England to break up the defense itself and the momentum that South Africa is able to often get with their big hits. So it's smart of England to leverage their bigger wingers as well as their kicking game. And Jack van Poortvliet at scrum half was also doing a great job putting some really well-placed box kicks deep into the South African half, and always putting up kicks that were quite contestable for the bigger England wingers. Unfortunately for Van Poortvliet, I think the South African boys did cotton on to the fact that he takes quite a while with his box kicks. And with some of the new laws, you can't really protect or block your scrum half anymore. You saw Eben Etzebeth giving Jack van Poortvliet an absolute nightmare of a day, constantly charging down his kicks. I think he charged down 2 of them and put a lot of pressure on him every single time he was getting the ball. And the one resulted in a try where Etzebeth got his hands on the ball. And Marcus Smith then cleaned it up and tried to put through another clearing kick that Pieter-Steph du Toit once again charged down and added in an amazing chase and dot down to score in the left corner. So I think it was smart of South Africa to identify that, I don't want to say a weakness of Jack van Poortvliet, but he does take his time with some of those box kicks, the way he pulls it out of the ruck, and he was starting to get frustrated. A perfect analysis by the box, whether it was in real time on the field or maybe they picked it up in a video analysis. But yeah, great insight from them and great ability to capitalize on that. The thing I like about England that you're seeing now, to give them credit, is them using the tools that they have available. They're using their bigger wingers with a smart kicking game plan, and they're using the fleet-footedness of Marcus Smith and the kind of innovation he brings to the game. You saw that with Marcus Smith early in the game where he looked like he was about to go for a drop goal. Noticed the lack of defense on the short side for the box and managed to get around the outside with his speed, with his footwork, and with some really good passing, straight running, and very minimal space. He paired up with Slade to put Ollie Slidehope over for his first try. Great example of just perfect heads-up rugby. Looking up and seeing what's in front of you and then exploiting it if there's something on. And maybe Marcus Smith isn't that traditional England fly half that they've known in years gone by, like Owen Farrell or George Ford, who play a very structured, very organized game. Marcus Smith can do that, but one thing he's probably the best at, one of the best in the world, undoubtedly the best in the Premiership, is seeing an opportunity and playing it, whether it's a chip over the top, a wide cutout pass, a cross kick, him having a go himself. He's exceptionally good at doing that. So it was probably something the Boks weren't expecting. They were expecting this aerial assault from them once again. And again, that's just the creation of patterns. England kicking all the time, looking for that cross-field bomb. Suddenly, they know Marcus Smith likes his drop goals as of late. He gets the ball. The Boks have seen this picture before. They're expecting something to happen and play out the way that they analyzed it. Suddenly, Smith can flip the script and do something else. So great play by him. While some of the other England players, and it hurts me to say it, Ollie Lawrence and Henry Slade didn't have the best games, some of the other boys did stand up and performed really well. I mentioned it in my preview, and it came to fruition. George Martin brought a lot of physicality to the Boks. And Sam Underhill, another guy who came in, I mentioned him in my preview, he just added a huge amount of grit and physicality to that England side. Scored himself a nice try, which came off George Martin run. Again, they brought a lot of ball-carrying prowess to England, something that they needed. So I think they're starting to build that forward pack that England's been so desperately needing. If they can get that forward pack to click well and to front up physically, you can see what they're able to do. The one area they were weaker in, and it was probably more a testament to the South Africans, was the scrum. From the moment they set and hit, you could see that England scrum moving backwards. But to their credit, Jack van Poortvliet did a good job to get that ball out as fast as possible. I think England probably ran out of time to prepare for the scrums, or they knew it was coming and there was nothing they could do. You could see the strategy was to get that ball out as fast as possible. And well done to England again for them just using what they have available and playing more reactive rugby and doing things that they see in front of them happening rather than trying to control the game at every single moment. And I love how this game just kept evolving as it went on. Both teams were starting to exploit each other's weaknesses and learn things about one another, almost downloading information as it went on. You saw the Boks starting to play a lot deeper and trying to get around that England defense with the second line of attack, which was the moment where Fussy was able to find Arendse, even though the try was taken away. It just showed that attacking intent where they're able to drift on the outside of that rushing defender. If anyone knows this rush blitz defense, it's the Springboks. So they know how to beat it also. And they were doing a great job with ball in hand, trying to beat it, whereas England were using the kicking game to try and beat the Boks version of the rush defense. So it was a great contrast, a great boxing match and arm wrestle of teams that actually were playing a similar style of defensive rugby, but with completely different attacking strategies. And with the smaller wingers, the Boks were even able to send through Eben Etzebeth quite a few times to chase those box kicks, which was quite interesting. It wasn't a once-off. You saw him a few times getting his hands up in the air, trying to out-jump Freddie Stewart, or at least just get his hand above Freddie Stewart, which was an interesting way to use Etzebeth as opposed to expecting the wingers to get up above Stewart, because, he's got way more height and a way higher vertical leap than the South African wingers. So again, both teams just using the players and the tools they have at their disposal to play the best rugby they can. You got to give credit to this bomb squad, or whatever you want to call this combination of a bench that came on. Kwagga Smith, Andre Pollard, Vincent Koch, Malcolm Marks, they just all came on and added an intense amount of physicality. You saw Crocker Smith absolutely smash Marcus Smith. Pollard was out jumping the wingers to take high kicks. Malcolm Marks and Vincent Koch were putting in some huge tackles, and they added a lot of physicality to the set piece. Suddenly the mauls were working. Things seemed to be operating a lot better. Their influence of coming on and adding that physicality and showing how keen they are, you'd suddenly seen the players who had been on the field for the whole game up their level of intensity too. Suddenly Damien Dialendi was bashing through tackles. Peter Steph-Totori was dominating physically. All the guys suddenly upped their own intensity for the bomb squad coming on and showing what they could do. So a little bit of a wake-up call for the Boks to remember to bring that physicality, and the bench coming off and adding that impact, I think, is a great reminder to the other Boks and just reminding them of the synergy they have. If they can all up their game, they almost become unplayable. And you certainly saw in the attack where the Boks were a little bit disjointed throughout the game. As soon as the intensity went up, Damien Dialendi made that break and knew Cheslin Kolbe was going to be on his right-hand side, throws a beautiful bridge pass over to him. Kolbe does his thing and scores in the corner. They suddenly looked like they clicked back into that World Cup winning team and had this almost telepathic element to them on attack. So yeah, great game all in all. I thought the Boks and England deserve a round of applause for that game they put on, kind of playing this very tactical chess game with one another, trying to suss each other out all the time and constantly changing and adapting every time each respective team spotted a potential weakness with the other one. So yeah, very clever game, great game of Test rugby, and it just shows that England and Springbok rivalry is alive and well. But yeah, that's just what I think. What do you think of the game? Are there any standout players or things that happened that you think are worth a mention? Please comment down below. Please hit like, please hit subscribe. It really helps the channel. And I'll see you in the next one.